Okay, welcome, Becky. Welcome, Jerry. Jerry, first time on the show, Becky's husband. And of course, welcome back, Mr. James Snap. Thank you for being here, everybody.
You're welcome.
We got an exciting show, I think, tonight. I've been wanting to do this for a while, guys. We're going to talk about the Shroud of Turin, and we're going to go over some of the new evidence that came out, and we're going to go over some of the old evidence, and it's going to be a good time. So, um, let's see here. Why don't we start with you, James? What do you feel about the Shroud of Turin? I know you have a bit of different opinions than the three of us. I think it's legitimate.
I believe the Shroud of Turin is a very good item of medieval origin.
You think it's from the medieval time period?
Yes.
So, okay. Have you looked at the new dating that came out a few months ago?
Well, let's let Jerry handle that part.
Okay. Okay. We got Jerry here, who's Becky's husband.
He'll be
And-
speaking on my account.
Okay. So I just want to say, like, if you guys remember, the Shroud of Turin's been around for a while. It's supposed to be the burial cloth of Christ.
Right.
And in 1978, we were just talking before we went live about a huge, not a huge team, but a team of scientists that they did a bunch of tests basically back in 1978. Right, Jerry, in 1988, they actually did a radiocarbon dating. So I just want to go over some of the things they did in 78, and then I'll let you start talking there, Jerry. You can jump in anytime you want, Jerry, but I'm just going to go over some of the results from 78, right? So this was what they did is they were given comprehensive, primarily physiochemical study of the Shroud of Turin carried out by dozens of American scientists who obtained permission from the Shroud's owner, former King Humberto II of Italy, and the church authorities to directly access it for 96 hours. They only had 96 hours, so they did as much tests as they could back then.
That's not a lot of time.
In 96 hours. It's not a lot of time. That's all they had with it. So the project participants, it says they carried out non-invasive, mainly spectroscopic and microscopic measurements, took a number of scientific photographs and samples of microscopic particles from the surface of the cloth for further analysis by pressing specially prepared adhesive tapes that leave no stick trace onto it. So STIRP is the acronym for this team that studied it. This group recognized to this day as the most complete experimental scientific study of the Shroud using a vast arsenal of research techniques available in 1970s and 80s. So, Jerry, let's talk about what they actually were able to validate in this first study.
Well, during that time frame, they first matched the fact that the cloth is consistent with cloth that would have been available in Jerusalem around the time frame. They also, while they only had that limited time to actually touch and physically observe and photograph the cloth, they actually spent thousands of hours after that on their research, developing it.
Okay.
That led to the culmination, obviously, of them all believing at that time that this is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ, which led to the carbon-14 dating testing in 1988.
And also, I don't know if you said this already, but they were also able to determine that it was real male human blood, right? That was in the shroud.
Yes, I was going to summarize that part later, but yes.
Okay. And to those of you that don't know or aren't familiar with the shroud, this image you're looking at right now is not the image you would see if you looked at the shroud. Actually, if you looked at the plain shroud, you wouldn't really see any image. There might be some stains on it, but you definitely wouldn't see a face or a head or anything. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry, but the story goes there was a photographer back in the 19th century, right? The 1800s or something.
Early 1800s. He was a very early one. I actually have his name. His name is Segundo Pia.
Okay, and when he actually photographed the shroud for the first time, when he was developing the negatives, he almost hit the floor and had a heart attack because in the photo negatives, this is the image that appeared.
It wasn't a negative, actually. It ended up being that he got a positive, like he had actually printed a photo. He could see the image clearly on what was supposed to be a negative.
The one on the right-hand side.
The one on the right-hand side, whereas the one on the left is actually, even though it's linen, it's an actual negative.
Okay.
And when he published it, it stunned the photography community and the scientific world at the time.
So you can't see this with the naked eye. This is a photo negative, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
When you publish what should have been the negative, when he's actually taking the film and making the negative, it actually made the photo.
Okay. So that's interesting, guys. So we were talking about the date that this Strupp team came up with in 1988. It was a radiocarbon date, right? And they came up with a date from the medieval period.
1200s to 1300s, yeah.
Exactly. And I remember watching the show, and this is historical fact. James would know this because he knows history, but where the shroud was being stored in the medieval period, there was a fire, right? A big fire.
In the 1500s.
In the 1500s, there was a fire that actually broke out. I forget where it was held at the time, but there was a fire. They managed to save the shroud, but part of it was damaged, and they actually sewed back on a number of material to the shroud. And where they took that sample from for radiocarbon dating was actually on the corner that was repaired and sewn back on, right?
Yes.
Right, but that wasn't found out until a long time later.
The sewn-on piece wasn't proven until the year 2005.
Yeah, and the whole time Christians were a lot of Christians like me, myself, and I think you guys were believers in the shroud. Like we believed in the shroud, and when they said this stuff, like no, it wasn't. It wasn't an accurate date. It was taken from a corner that was, repaired later. A lot of atheists and naysayers laughed at us and made fun of Christians that thought this was the case, and they thought we were basically reaching at stutters, right? Yeah, they're even
the community, because the couple, the husband and wife, who came up with that theory in the late 90s and 2000, saying that they instead took a repaired piece that was invisibly woven. It was dismissed. No one wanted to look into it. But at that point, Raymond Rogers, who was one of the original shroud testers from the Strupp team, took his original samples and went back through. And it took him from that late 99 to 2000 time frame till 2005 to have 100% concrete evidence. And his summary came out at that point was those claiming that the invisible reweaving was impossible were clearly wrong. The carbon-14 date sample was chemically different in composition to the rest of the entire shroud.
They could also see, I think so, they went in with a microscope and they could see the weave pattern that they used to repair the corner with.
Yes.
Because the shroud had like a distinctive bone weave pattern, and you could clearly see that the corner had been repaired with a different weave.
And also stretching the existing fibers too as well to repair it.
I don't even think it was just that corner. I think there were several pieces, because when you look at the whole thing in the photographs, when you get those triangle looking things, those are the places that were repaired because of the holes that
had burn marks,
had burned into it from the fire.
Okay, guys, so move forward a bunch of years. Jerry says it was a couple years ago. I thought it was a couple months ago, but there's some new evidence that came out called X-ray scattering dating. And they X-ray scattered the shroud, and lo and behold, it came out to get about a date of 2200 years, give or take a few years.
Yes.
So it says the latest argument arrived in August 2024, courtesy of Italy's Institute of Crystallography. I don't know how to say crystallography, which declared that the shroud was indeed 2,000 years old, in keeping with tradition. So, James, you've been silent for a little bit. What is your whole issue, brother, with this, with these evidence, this dating, this shroud? Like, what do you have against this? Why do you think it is from the medieval period?
Well, the analysis by Walter McCrone, I think, still holds various things of the pollen that was there.
Who?
Only back to a certain date.
Who?
Walter McCrone.
Walter McCrone?
McCrone.
How do you... Oh, Walter McCrone, American chemist.
M.C.
Yeah, I see him right here. Walter McCrone, 1916 to 2002, was an American chemist who worked extensively on applications of polarized light microscopy, expert in electro what did this guy? Here, I'll show him. I'll show you guys. This is your reason why you don't think the shroud's legit. Like, what did this guy say about it?
Well, this is my primary reason, but his data seems valid.
Okay. You were saying something about the face cloth.
Yes.
What were you saying about the face cloth? That was one of your reasons why you didn't think it was legit.
Well, you think that how the image got there, the face cloth would surely have an effect on having a different image, having it be different the way there was a face cloth to the way there wasn't with his chest area.
Okay, so you think that the blood on the face cloth would have been different than the shroud, or is that what you're
I'm
saying?
saying the reason why there's an image, it would have to require a massive amount of radiation if it were real,
Okay.
of light energy coming into it.
Okay.
And so that light energy would not be the same whether there was a face cloth on and whether there was not. But in the shroud, we see a uniform image.
Does anyone want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I can. There's a couple different things, but first off, the face cloth is called the Sudarium. It's in Oviedo, Spain.
Okay.
There's a couple different documentaries out there. One's called The Case for Christ's Resurrection, where they talk about this specific one. When they went ahead and they chemically tested it, they found, and they superimposed them over each other, they found they coincide in three main ways. First, the blood type on both cloths matches blood type AB, which is two of the rare, whether it be negative or positive, it's two of the three rarest blood types in the entire world.
Okay.
You have 0.6% of AB negative, and you have 3.4% of the population is AB positive. The stains on the back of the head of the person in both cloths show the blood stains that were shed in life, meaning the blood formed and began clotting while the person was alive. They were caused by a sharp object that penetrated the skin. When both cloths are overlaid together, the shape of the stains of the blood coincide and match 100%.
Jerry,
Yes.
There are several cloths out there, Mendelians. Which one are you referring to?
The Sudarium in Oviedo, Spain.
Say again?
The Sudarium, it's the face cloth that's in Oviedo, Spain.
Okay, got it.
So when it's overlaid at the same time with the shroud, it's 100% perfect match with the blood, everything in this particular case. Which led to their forensic pathologists determining that they were used by the same exact burial victim.
I'm getting like this conclusion is that the Sudarium of Oviedo covered the same face of the Shroud of Turin, most likely that of Jesus of Nazareth. The very fact the cloth was kept at all and was so well documented points to its authenticity.
Correct.
Okay.
Jerry, do you know have there been any comparisons with the Mendelian?
I have not seen that. It wasn't referenced.
Okay.
They went to the ones that were known and claimed to be both the burial cloth and the face cloth.
Right.
So who is this guy, man? McRone. Well, we know who he is, but he's claiming this is paint, dude. Says the story of the this is from the latest McCrone Shroud update, but this was like in 1999.
Yes.
This is his latest update in 1999. He says, my modest contribution toward that goal is to show 4 pictures shortly after I learned through careful study of the 32 sticky tapes taken from the shroud that the image substance was paint. I made up 2 paints, one with pigment red ochre and gelatin solution, and the other with diluted blood. The red ochre paint was 0.01% pigment and 0.0% gelatin in water. The blood paint was 3% whole blood in water. I made up these 2 paints for 2 reasons. First, to determine the amount of iron that is needed to register a visible image. It turned out to be about 3 micrograms per square centimeter. Second, to compare sticky tape samples from linen cloths painted with both paints. The red ochre paint linen yielded tapes indistinguishable from the shroud tapes. I've chosen these 4 pictures to illustrate those results.
There's one big problem with that, Nick.
What's that?
Well, it's not paint. The paint cannot create a photographic negative. Even in fact, there was actually a couple scientists, before we get into the other part that's more amazing on this, but there was actually one scientist who calculated, in order to actually generate enough light, there's only 2 options. The first option is God did it. The second option to create this would be a collimated and straight and directional vacuum ultraviolet radiation, where the cloth is falling down flat. To do that, though, you would need to have 6 to 8 billion watts of vacuum ultraviolet radiation, which would be like 500,000 searchlights worth of energy running to 1/40th billionth of a second. And all that energy coming from the body while using a laser device that's like an ARF excimer laser. And to do that, you'd have to exceed all the ultraviolet capacity technology that we have in the entire world, including laboratories today, as of 2022 to 2023, to produce that single image just for that 1/40th billionth of a second.
Well, I thought they did.
Nick, it could just be paint.
I'm sorry, we didn't hear you.
It could just be paint.
Then how does it become a photographic negative when they become a positive when they take a photo of it?
How does it generate a 3D holographic image?
Nick is looking at some of the evidence right now. Nick, you want to zoom in on those images?
Yeah.
And just read the captions.
It's okay. So this one says, there's this image up top. Figure 1, red blood on linen cloth. Note the color is brown and not the red color normally associated with fresh blood. Low magnification, about 5 times. Next image is shroud blood on linen. This is also a low magnification shot taken of a blood image, small of the back, taken by Pella, Corey, and Evans in 1978. Note the red color, unlike real blood on figure 1. Okay. Taken by... this is figure 3, a tape of the real blood image in figure 1, showing the high magnification 1,000 times. Real blood, again, brown, unlike the shroud paint.
Okay, well, I can dispel that just from the forensic pathologist who actually tested the blood.
Yeah, that's what I remember too.
The forensic pathologist who tested the blood, he actually gave this exact summary. It's by Dr. Robert Buckland. He's a forensic pathologist. He stated that the shroud shows a 5'11" Caucasian male weighing around 170 pounds. There are puncture wounds present in the image on the top, front, and back of the head. AB is the blood type. There's a swelling over one cheek consistent with a beating. Additionally, the right wrist is covered by the left hand, and the left wrist has a puncture wound consistent with the crucifixion injury. Streams of blood running down the forearms on both arms, originating in the wrist areas and controlled by gravity. So the blood flows towards the elbows when the arms were stretched during crucifixion and above. On the back is more than 100 lesions from whipping and scourging, which lines up in size exactly with the Roman flagrum whip precisely. On the front, there's a large blood stain consistent with a puncture from a lance or spear penetrating through the thoracic cavity into the heart. The shroud also shows that after the body was removed from the cross, the blood left the heart wound and puddled around the small of the back. There's also an abrasion on one knee consistent with a fall. Finally, a spike was driven through both feet, and blood from that wound has stained the cloth bottom and front.
There was also a spear wound.
That was the lance part.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
So, Nick, can you go ahead and read the caption for figure 4?
Sure. Figure 4. The tape of a shroud blood image, area 3 CB, showing only a red ochre paint image.
It's ochre.
Ochre paint image, also at high magnification. Okay, the tape of a shroud blood image showing only red ochre paint image.
So it's paint. So in this image, you're looking at paint, not blood.
I guess my first question would be when did he actually have access to test and actually be able to blood test this, unlike the pathologist who actually had access and took a swab from that blood.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Who he had the tape samples, I guess, right? That they
Yeah,
used.
that's what I thought it was said.
My second question would be, if it was a fake, how come it would be a exact photographic negative on a linen cloth, which even today cannot be redone if it was painted?
Because that's what it was painted to look like.
I don't think it was painted, bro. I honestly don't.
I know, but Nick, I've been trying to get at what you think. I'm trying to get at the truth.
Yeah, me too. So, like, what's that pathologist's name again?
The pathologist, let me go back to him. Hold on a second.
I want to look up what he has to say. The guy who actually tested the blood.
Yeah, and then there's also several others too, but he's Dr. Robert Buckland is the most recent one.
But Nick, if you please slow down and look at this picture, notice it's not blood; it's paint.
Well, that's
the picture in front of your eyes, right here. That's paint.
I'm looking at it, but this
Alec is asking you to roll up a little bit.
Roll up. What do you mean?
He's asking you to scroll back up. I don't know why.
No, 54 is fine.
Well, I know that this guy is saying that it's paint, but I mean,
there was a photographic specialist named Dr. Ben Wetherington III. He said this was made in a time where they had no idea about photographic negatives, and yet this is on a cloth, something they can't even do today.
This is
I don't
one.
to the time of day.
What, brother?
I don't trust Ben Witherington one little bit.
Trust who?
Ben Witherington III of Ashbury Theological Seminary.
Oh, why is that?
I have reasons.
I don't really know even who that is, but
I do.
I know what you're saying, that this picture right here is supposed to prove that it's paint, but like this is one.
If you compare this to a picture of blood, it's a very different image.
But this is one person from 1999, and there's like an entire team of other PhDs and
Dick, this is one photograph. How many photographs do you need? It's photographic image.
There's also the photographs of the negatives from the 1800s, from 1931. There was also a writer who was a skeptic non-believer from Paris who was named Yves Delage. He actually looked at photos of the shroud and studied the pathologies of the man in the shroud compared to Jesus of Nazareth, and ended up writing a paper about it and came to the conclusion, even though he's not a believer, that this is Jesus of Nazareth without making any faith claims. As a result, the Académie des Sciences in Paris refused to publish his paper and laughed him out of the scientific community for making that professional opinion.
Well, that's too bad, but nonetheless, that doesn't mean anything except past events. The evidence that we have now shows paint, which implies this relic is not authentic.
There's no that person did not actually determine it was paint. He is not a pathologist.
Are you reading what I read?
But there's so much. Why do you take his word over all the other people's words? Though,
why don't
James?
you?
Because Nick, Alec is asking what year the Macron Research Institute, this thing that we're looking at, was done.
1999. Well, I mean, I do, but then I would have to throw away what all the other people are saying, James.
Right.
So people who had access to the actual materials for 96 years and did thousands of hours of research on it.
So if we're supposed to be looking for the truth, aren't we supposed to be looking at all aspects and then making a informed decision?
Of course.
This guy's saying
in front of you a picture, a photograph of paint. What does that imply?
I realize that's what he's saying that it is, and I realize that it's different from what he actually said is blood, but we still have all of these other pieces of evidence that people have done over the years that, dude, that's not cool. That have that say a completely different story. I realize, I'm not one to just jump easily on a bandwagon myself either, but based on the information that I have seen presented, this guy is an outlier and all of the others tell a completely different story on multiple different levels. the fact that, as I touched on earlier, and I'm sure Jerry has it in his notes, they've found somehow that when you put the image there, there's actually holographic data in there that creates and renders a 3D image. No one in the Middle East even knew what a holograph was. That technology didn't exist. How would that even be possible?
Not to mention, from a photo of that time frame, they're supposed to be, and I'm trying to get the exact numbers here just one second.
I would say one well-informed outlier is with 1,000 people who just want to see what they want to believe.
Well, there's a photography specialist named Dr. Petrus Soons. He's a pioneer also in holographic technology. Using the negatives from the 1930s photos of the shroud, he said, based on that time frame, you only should see 200 to 300 megabytes of data when you digitally scan those negatives. And yet they were closer to a gig, or 4 times the anticipated information. He then took it to a holographic laboratory where he was told that there's no way that you'll be able to get the data off of these old photos. Yet they got a full 3D image of the body. The hologram image then showed the left leg had been stretched, put in a diagonal place where the left foot was placed on the cross. The right foot was then on top of the left foot when nailed to the cross with a single nail. Under the beard by the neck in the shroud image, they found an amulet with the letters sticking out on the amulet, which spells the Hebrew characters Abba, which is Aleph, Bet, Aleph, which means father, placed by the disciples, which would mean here is the Son of God. And that was only available through that 3D technology of that same shroud.
And
human blood has been found on the red stains of the Turin shroud. What is this? ScienceDirect.com.
And then there's also the physics piece about it as well. There's actually a physicist named Dame Isabel Fitzik. She's a particle physicist. She actually was astounded by this. She found an interface that divided the image into 2 hermetically separate actions, causing the shroud to be taut and parallel on both sides, creating what they call a horizon event, where the image is projected both up and down simultaneously and not crushing down on the bottom of the shroud or the slab beneath it, which would be based on gravity.
Also, there's another one, James, and a new theory that was done in 1999. This is from ScienceDirect.com. They're saying that it was real blood that was reinforced with pigment later.
And
that would explain why he would have found actual paint from the shroud then, the shroud samples.
It says human blood has been found on the red stains of the Shroud of Turin. Also, red pigments have been found on the red stains of the Shroud of Turin. Conflicting hypotheses about the origin of this material have been formulated. New analysis on this material furnished a hypothesis that explains the conflicting hypotheses. The initial blood on the shroud was later reinforced by pigments. So, I mean, that could be too, right? Because
that would explain why he found
with the repair patching and things that they did over time.
I just don't see why. I respect James's expert, but I don't see why there'd be one guy and then so many other doctors and experts saying, no, this is blood, this is real, we tested the DNA, we did this, we did that.
If you've ever known painters, it is not unusual if you're going to make something like a shroud and say, we're going to make a picture of what it would look like if the shroud of Jesus from over 1,000 years ago is still existing, and we're going to use that to meditate on.
But
it would not be unusual to use human blood.
Okay, so what about this? This is one of the points we saw in the documentaries. If this is a painting, why is it so drastically different from the styles of the Renaissance paintings that were being done at that time? Because no one was painting like this, and in order to achieve this type of result, someone would have had to have been physically actually tortured and crucified and gone through this process in order to even recreate this.
Our very good artists, because if they say, let's see what we can do as far as having done our research and know what a dead body looks like, that would have been gone through Roman beatings and whippings, and they hung on a cross and try to replicate that as the best we can, and they did a very good job.
In the 1300s, unlikely. Not only that, but also there.
Why unlikely? Unlikely. That is a dismissal. I mean,
Because by that time,
unlikely.
crucifixion was already viewed as the worst torture and way of dying in the entire history of the world. It had been done away with because it was considered to be so horrible.
Wasn't it like an actual like image that only showed up in the negative anyway? Like it's not like a painting we're looking at. They didn't even see it until Buddy developed the picture in the 1800s.
In 1888.
So it wasn't like a thing that was put on display.
Picture,
you know what I mean?
The shroud looks
but
like
those the configuration of the shroud, it would not have been so faint. It would have been to them who would know the idea of what it represented. It would have a fine meditation tool, so they could easily have the image there and see the shape of it, recognize these are the wounds of Christ on his head, these are the wounds on his feet, these are the wounds on his hands, this is him in repose.
And they could have gotten the pollen and everything from that exact area at that exact time. They didn't know micropollens at that point. So there's no way they could have gotten micropollens from the Middle East. The soil samples, they didn't know about the testing we'd have 1,000 years later.
My question is, how did the artists or whatever in the medieval period get it to turn up in the negative photos? Like it didn't.
You can't do it today.
That didn't show up it wasn't like, oh, look at this picture. They had to wait until they had to wait until photographs were invented to take the image and develop the negative and find that image in it, James.
And then have the access to do it too. Because this person only did it because the king was trying to do a celebration.
Nick, can you bring up this website?
Yeah.
But there's something even more amazing about the shroud that a physicist had, but we'll get to that in the field.
Where are you going to put it in the private chat, or
I can do that.
Yeah, it'd be a lot easier.
There you go.
Let's see here. Shroud.com. Examine. I already got this website up actually, but okay.
Just trying to show basically when you're not looking at a photograph of it, what it actually looks like to the human eye.
Okay.
Go down to about halfway to the Shroud of Turin dorsal image reference photographs.
This one?
Yeah, just a tiny little bit more without the negative. That's basically what it appears like, these two right here with the naked eye. You can barely even see an image.
Yeah, that's what the shroud looks like. That's what it looks like before it gets developed in a photo negative.
Right.
Well, it is a negative before it gets developed as a photo positive, as an actual photograph.
Yeah, exactly. So I just don't see that doesn't look very artistly made. It just looks like an old broken old cloth, right?
Right. And like I said earlier, these triangle patches, these are where the repairs were done
from fire marks
because of the fire damage.
That's actually the burn marks that got repaired.
Yeah, these people like Macron are claiming this is a medieval forgery too, and the new dating that just came out confirmed it was from 2000.
FMA, forgery would be a hard word because forgery implies an intent to deceive.
Okay, well,
how did they make what it would be? Please explain it, because I can't do it now.
That's what it would be, right, James? If some artist made it, sorry to cut you off, Jerry, but if some artist made this in the medieval time, would it not be intent to deceive people?
No, not necessarily. Is there a record anywhere saying I made this with the intent to deceive somebody? No.
Well, don't you think the artist?
There could be nothing more than an attempt to have this picture, just like we have a picture of Jesus in our houses, and say, we made this to remember the wounds of Christ and how he was laid in the tomb.
Then I would really love you to explain how
I would have to question their motives.
Because why? If you scroll up or down from here, Nick, on that page, when you take a photograph of it, the black and white ones is what it looks like. It actually becomes a photo positive.
Yeah, that's why I don't
technology to make this even now.
This is what it looks like with the naked eye. This is what it looks like when they. Where is it?
Right there.
This is what it looks like when they. Right. This is as it appears on a photographic negative. This is when you start seeing the detail of the Roman cat of nine tails, his hands, the thing in his wrist, not his palms, where it would be, the crown that was pressed into his head. You only see that in a photographic negative, James. And then,
how would they do that 500 to 600 years before?
That's an assumption, Nick. You could also see it in a painting made by a very well-informed artist.
You can what? Pardon, sorry.
You can also see the same things a painting made by a very well-informed artist who did his research.
But
So they have artwork. You're telling us there's artwork that is a photographic negative out there from the 12 to 1300s. Please provide an example.
Well, that's what I mean. This only shows up in a photographic negative, so the artist would have to be pretty good to make it, expecting photograph technology to be invented in a couple hundred years for his image to show up, don't you think?
And have that technique. And that's before we even get into the burn-in patterns, which that physicist I was starting to mention, Dame Isabel Fitzik.
All you need, Nick, is have paint that fades over time, which almost all medieval paint does.
But it would show up if it was painted. It wouldn't show up as a reverse negative image.
Yeah, this is what it looks like with the naked eye right here.
That's what you see right there. If you go into...
I know, I'm aware, but I'm saying that's what paint does. The paint, when it was applied, it was very thin, and then it faded.
No, because otherwise you'd have every single masterpiece of Rembrandt, Da Vinci, etc., doing the same thing. I've seen the Sistine Chapel. It doesn't look like that.
Yeah, there's no one attached their name to this either.
The chapel was made in stucco. This was made out of cloth with diluted paint.
What about all the other oil paints from the medieval times that are still surviving and don't look like
they are oil paints. This is not.
No, even acrylic paints and other types. So my question is, when they scientifically test this, they cannot recreate this. We do not have the technology to recreate this. If this is painted, someone would have been able to recreate it. There's been thousands upon thousands of people and hours looked into this. Scientists, some of the top minds in the entire world when it comes to different fields. Not one can recreate this. So how do you...
this is actually like one of the most studied artifacts on
planet. It is.
It's the most torn apart and studied artifact in terms of research.
Most scrutinized.
You don't think that all the people out there, if they could prove it was fake and recreate it, they would have not done that already?
Well, I have better things to do right now than try to recreate the Shroud of Turin.
That doesn't really answer the question, though, James.
It doesn't. You're talking about basically designing something that there's no other thing like it, and we don't have the technology to make it even now, and doing that in the 12 to 1300s.
I love you, James. I really do, but I don't think this is a medieval painted forgery myself, bro.
And not only that, but there's still the X-ray technology. There's a new X-ray test that carbon data and date the pollen fibers and also the materials and everything else.
It also has traces of the argonimium that would be in the Israel rocks from the time too.
Exactly. It has the actual soil samples and rock samples in there. It has pollen samples. A forger from medieval times would not know to that detail. They didn't discover microparticles at that point.
I'm trying to find the guy, Jerry, who said it was actually real blood.
It was part of the STURP team.
Yeah. STURP team.
But the other piece that's to me is amazing, and I'm going to go talk about this for a second while you're looking.
Yeah.
There's a particle physicist named Dame Isabella Fitzik. She actually found an interface that divides the image into two hermetically separate actions, causing the shroud to be both taut and parallel at the same time, meaning it's completely seamless and also even on both the top and bottom, creating what she calls an event horizon, which is a black hole where the image was both projected up and down simultaneously, not crushing on the bottom of the shroud or the slab beneath it. It's literally a black hole inside that shroud at that time.
Like the body would have had to have been levitating.
At that moment, when the body was inside the shroud and the burst of light occurred, the law of gravity in the universe ceased to exist and had their own separate universal laws. It's also distorted by the fact that it was wrapped around the body. There's not a single wrinkle or defect in the image from the wrapping.
Not to get so complex into particle physics and everything, but there was
that when Jesus was inside that shroud, it was even though it was supposedly tied, and wrapped up around him, it was completely flat, like you had ironed it even, and there was no gravity there. Even though his body was on the slab, there's no gravity, and that image is burned top and bottom, like he had a separate universe inside just that shroud.
Well, I was gonna say they use some technology, some equipment from NASA that measures topographical craters and stuff on the moon.
She was the person that was on that test. Yes,
they used that equipment on it to actually verify that it was like a radioactive image that was burnt from the inside of the cloth outwards.
Yes, and it didn't damage the cloth. The only other time in human history we have any type of burning like this is when the U.S. dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The people that were outside were burned and etched into the stonework. But they disappeared. The cloth is not damaged.
So check this out, guys. This is talking about the STRP team, the original project of scientists that studied it. It says for the next 5 days, after the exposition, the STRP team analyzed the shroud around the clock at the Royal Palace adjoining Turin Cathedral. Some scientists sleeping while others worked. A team of European scientists headed by Luigi Gonella supervised the activities. The team gathered sticky tape samples of material from several points of the surface of the shroud. The STRP team members continued their research after access to the shroud was published, many of their results in scientific journals and proceedings. So in 1981, the final report, STRP team wrote, "We can conclude for now that the shroud image is that of real human form of a scourged, crucified man. It is not the product of an artist. The blood stains are composed of hemoglobin and also give a positive test for serum abellum. The image is an ongoing mystery, and until further chemical studies are made, perhaps by this group of scientists, or perhaps by some scientists in the future, the problem remains unsolved." So this is what they were able...
Something.
Pardon me?
I would like to point out something.
Sure.
I have here a piece of Israel. I've never been to Israel, but this has.
Okay.
This is from Jerusalem.
Gotcha.
Now, in the Middle Ages, of course, after the First Crusade, there was the kingdom of Alrima in the Holy Land.
Oh, what? Sorry? There was what? Sorry?
The kingdom of Alrima?
Kingdom of Outriver?
Alrima.
Oh, Alver. Okay.
Or Udrina.
Okay.
And pilgrims could easily travel from Europe to the Holy Land and buy things. They could buy cloth, they could buy relics, they could buy souvenirs, the little jugs of holy oil from the Jordan River, just like they do today.
Uh-huh.
So it would not be hard for a cloth from the Holy Land to find its way from there to Europe.
But it did. In fact, one of the records show in the 600s, it was found after it had been actually tied up in a wall during a Muslim invasion. They had actually hid it away in the gateway of the wall that they were building.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of history to this thing. It's been charted in all throughout history as far back as what, I don't know when, but Jerry, maybe you know when. Let's see, Shroud of
Turin. Some from the 600s, there's some I believe from the 300s, and even records of it from around the 50s of AD.
In history. The first historical account of the shroud occurs in 1354, when it is recorded that it wound up in the hands of famed knight Geoffrey de Charnay.
Yeah, the knights are supposedly are the ones who were the last ones to get it before they brought it to Turin.
Oh, when is it first mentioned? 1350s. Oh, I get what you're saying, James. Like, yeah, there are people that make images and artists and stuff, but there's too much to this, bro.
I'm saying that
I actually have a link.
Having pollen from Israel is plain if you have cloth from Israel being brought to Europe.
I have a link to a few Macron studies that I'd like you to see if you could.
I posted the link in the private chat.
Macron guy? Okay. Let's see here. This is a PDF you gave me, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's in the second paragraph on the first page.
Okay, let me see what this is all about.
Yeah, take your time.
Bring it up on screen here. What type of... Sorry, go ahead.
At the end of the day, I mean, this isn't like a salvational issue, and if you're not convinced, then you're not convinced.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
yeah.
Right. The important part really is, to obviously understand that what Jesus did for us, not the cloth, but what it represents.
So
Jesus
this is, of course, at least, the four of us are all on the same page when it comes to Christ and the Trinity and salvational stuff. This obviously, you're right. This is not a salvational issue, but it's just something interesting. Like I was talking to James offline a few days ago about it, and I told him, it doesn't matter. I just think it's extremely cool that we have relics and stuff like this, whether you want to believe it's legit or not. I happen to. Okay, let's see here.
Second paragraph directly. Actually.
So what is this? This is a response to that guy.
It literally actually contradicts and says that he's incorrect for McGrone here in the second paragraph. If you want to read it.
Initial characterization of bloodstains. Blood is present. When the Shroud of Turin was scientifically examined almost 40 years ago, one of the fundamental questions addressed was, does real blood exist on the cloth? Various chemical tests were performed by two major groups, those headed by Bamia Ballone, an Italian scientist, and the scientists Heller and Adler, associated with the Shroud of Turin Research Project, or SHROUD, the American research team led by Jackson and Jumper. Bamia Ballone extracted threads from the cloth for her studies, whereas the SHROUD team relied on tape lift samples taken from the Shroud surface. The bulk of Heller and Adler's work was published in peer-reviewed scientific journals, while most of Bamia Ballone's findings were reported in Shroud specialty journals, particularly Sindon, and also in various compendium-style books. John Heller would also describe his findings and experiences in a narrative-style book. The conclusion of both parties was that the bloodstains on the shroud were in fact composed of blood 1 to 14. Others have, what is that, just the page number or something? Others have challenged these findings, particularly the noted microscopist Walter McCrone, who believed the bloodstains were merely painted on, and thus solely the product of pigments. Although the majority of the evidence would go against this point, moreover, such arguments do not take into account the immunological data that has been reported for blood-stained regions gathered by both Bamia Ballone and Heller and Adler, which is the main subject of this paper.
Literally, McGrone only had access to the tape. These people actually took real samples.
Fibers,
And 3 different people came to the conclusion it's blood.
What type of blood is it? Part 1, have human blood components been detected? After initial presumptive testing indicated the real blood was present on the cloth, the logical extension was to determine what type of blood might exist. Scientifically, there were 2 types of methods that allow the species of origin to be determined for bloodstains. Immunological testing using antibodies directed against specific blood components, and DNA testing evaluating expression of particular genes of interest. Whereas DNA testing is often the forefront of modern scientific evaluation, in such cases, DNA studies on the shroud are particularly hampered by the possibility of contamination by individuals throughout its history.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, it has been reported that human DNA has been found on the shroud. Such results are essentially meaningless in demonstrating that the blood is of human origin, as similar data could exist by individuals touching the cloth or even standing over it. Okay, so I don't want to have to read this whole thing, but I mean, yeah, that's what I was saying in the beginning. Like, I love and respect James a lot, but there's a lot of evidence here. Like, I think there's more evidence on the side that it's real blood than there is one person saying no, this is paint. So
I would remind you that there's a distinct possibility that they are both right. Meaning an artist can use his own blood as paint.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's that seems like a real stretch to say. I don't believe this is real, but I mean, the artist could have used his own.
Why do you say it's a stretch?
Because now you're saying the artist cut himself open and used his own blood to forge this image that appeared hundreds of years later.
You're using the word forge again, Nick. Say paint. Say make. Okay,
so he made this image that would only be discovered and appear hundreds of years later in a photo negative.
And would require him puncturing his hand.
No. Back up.
What do you mean, no?
He'll be using his own blood to make a picture of how he would imagine Christ's body would look when he was in the grave.
But there's no picture. It's a
There
negative.
is no picture.
But to him, there would be.
No, it wouldn't.
How?
If he was aware of what he made, think it through.
So he can mentally image that and make it into a perfect photographic negative that we can't even do today. Who is this person, and why don't we know?
Art.
Why don't we know about this person? We can't create it now. If someone had that technology 900 years ago, 800 years ago,
Where'd it go?
where'd it go?
I think
Focus
I
on
think
the
we
evidence instead of these what ifs.
I hoped you would actually
Oh,
have in mind when we refute your scientific data that you're using with the paint, actual scientists who tested 3 different ones who tested and said there's blood there. Now you're coming up with a different wild theory.
No, I'm showing everything a theory. Not wild.
it's not wild, but it's his theory for sure. His recreation, I think they tried to recreate it. They used I seen a thing where they used mirrors and they use sunlight to try and burn the image in there.
Yeah, they've tried.
Oh,
They just can't
check
do
it out, dude. DetroitCatholic.com. $1 million challenge to replicate the Shroud of Turin is expanded to the United States now. There you go, James. Let's try and recreate this. $1 million, dude.
Like I don't have enough to do.
Dude, that's crazy, dude. $1 million challenge to replicate Shroud of Turin is expanded to the United States, February 2024. Are you looking to make an easy million? All you got to do is recreate the photographic negative image of an apparently crucified man on a 14-foot by 3-foot piece of linen, and it has to have holographic features so that when it's rendered as a 3D dimensional profile based on the intensity of the shading, it should produce an accurately contoured 3D image of a human form.
They're not even asking you to do the photograph piece or the face cover, so that's pretty good.
Oh, other than the linen, which will be provided, it also has to be done using only materials and methods that would have been available in medieval times. Huh. Well, yeah, I think someone would have collected that if they could have by now, I think. That's yeah. Let's see what the old chat's saying here. Hello, Annabella. Didn't see you there. Let's see here. Happy New Year's from James. Happy New Year's to you, James. +3. What's that mean? Your third New Year's on this planet? Happy New Year +3.
Oh, and by the way, there was actually one problem with James's blood theory of the artist doing it.
What's that?
The blood itself actually shows that the victim was dead when it hit, and the blood had already began congealing and clotting when it stained with the linen. That's the study saying that.
Gotcha.
So you need a dead guy to do it too.
I think it's incredible that we have this, and I don't know, man. I think a lot of tests were done, and I think it's real. I mean, James doesn't, but I do, and I don't think unless some more really compelling evidence comes out that shows me it's fake, I think Mr. Macron there has been argued against or whatever.
But Nick, the other piece, when I was talking about the physicist, why that was so interesting,
Yeah.
inside that shroud with Jesus' resurrection, that burn-in image represents him creating a new universe. When he comes back, New Jerusalem, there's supposed to be a new earth, new heaven. Hell and death.
I don't fully understand that. I don't fully grasp that. Can you try and explain it again?
Picture when you're laying down on your bed, okay?
Okay, yeah.
When you're laying down on your bed, gravity makes it so your back is putting all the weight onto your bed.
Therefore, your butt
not
would
your
look
top.
smushed.
Therefore, your backing and your bed and everything else would have a deeper impression than the top of you.
Okay,
In this
gotcha.
particular case, when he's wrapped in that cloth, which they tied and folded over and everything else, that image does not have a single imperfection showing any wrinkles, any smudge. It's burnt evenly on the top and the bottom, The physicists basically said the only way that
Oh,
happens is if you're in a black hole state where there is no gravity and the laws of the universe no longer exist, and that's what she believes.
oh, okay. I see. So
So his body literally defied the laws of the universe while
you're
he was
saying basically the same pressure from the bottom and the top was into the cloth.
not only that, but in order to
like,
do that, the only way you can physically do that is if you have no gravity.
No gravity. Yeah. Okay.
with God, nothing shall be impossible.
And Jesus,
Oh,
when he died, he made everything new. We no longer are rejected and can't go to heaven. We can go to heaven through him. He created a new pathway. He created a new
yeah,
universe.
James, get
And
on
that's very,
board,
very
bro.
close to the resurrection.
We got to get James on board here, James
Well, I
Edwards.
definitely approve of the idea that we have made new in Christ.
I know you do.
No gravity makes the shroud seems absolutely ridiculous.
We need you to get on board with the shout. You need.
That's a dame physicist. Isn't a dame a person knighted by the queen for their efforts in that field?
I don't know. I wouldn't put any merit on being knighted by the queen, but
No, I'm just saying that's it's a title for a person.
You got to be good at what you do to get that. I understand what you're saying.
And as a physicist, that means if she was knighted for her, obviously knowledge in being a particle physicist, that's a pretty good honor for that. But she's actually the person who made that determination.
I think we need to buy a replica shroud for James to hang up in his back wall there.
Or as a bathrobe.
Yeah, a bathrobe. That'd be awesome. I don't know. It was good, man. I mean, does anyone else have anything they want to say? It's been about an hour.
I would say we need to be very careful. If a person thinks his carpet is special and holy, and he stares it long enough, he'll start to see faces.
Yeah, it's like pareidolia, right?
Yeah.
I love how you're like really skeptical, James, because I'm the same way. Like I do question a lot of things people tell me, so it's
Same.
cool to be like that, bro. Yeah, it's good that you're like that. Maybe on this particular subject, I think you're a bit too skeptical, but whatever, it's all good.
If it was a fake, this person would have to be the best at faking everything in the entire history of the world, because
He'd have to be pretty good.
They also did tests recently around that same time that they did the X-ray tests. They did pollen tests, and it actually dates the pollen to the Middle East to the 1st century. That's the first thing. Second of all, they did soil tests where, for example, where there's soil on the knee. So the person actually had to go ahead and find soil from the Middle East, from the pathway that Jesus walked towards the Temple Mount, from the 1st century, and put it on there in the Middle Ages. Additionally, the 3D hologram piece, which was a technology not available, also shows there's wounds in the shoulder from carrying a heavy object. He was carrying the cross.
Wow, these are all new
Because
finds.
that's what it was painted to be.
What?
Because that's what it was painted to memorialize.
So a person had to know photography in the 1200s or the 1300s. They had to know how to create something we can't do now. They had to know particles, microparticles, like, for example, pollens and soil and other things, and be able to place it and get it, obviously, date it from the time of Christ and put that specifically on the shroud in the 12 to 1300s. That's a heck of
That's a lot of work. That is a lot of work.
Yeah, that is quite a lot of work.
That's a heck of a forger.
That is a lot of work.
And then also find the Siderium.
Again, this is a question of forgery. Why should we call it a forgery? If it is a medieval object, and
they had also
to simply augment the monk's meditation in Turin, why call it a forgery? Why not call it a piece of art?
They also had to study the Siderium to a pinpoint precision in order to make it so it lines up perfectly with the blood patterns when they're overlaid to one another.
True.
And all the wounds and even the burned in image. So this person had to be one ahead of their time.
Very ahead of their
time. I kind of
time.
disagree with your comment about motive being irrelevant, James. I think motive is very relevant in a person's life. Like, what motivates someone to do something? Like, why are you motivated to do good Christian things? Is it because you?
In response to Alexander Kovalchuk's question, it's very hard from 800 years after the guy is dead to discern what his motive was.
Oh, okay, I got you. Sorry. It's
Also,
because I just had this conversation.
an exact match
Sorry.
to the clouds of Jerusalem, and it says it's like basically that soil is a fingerprint to a geologist, and the geologist who studied it said it matches exactly where Jesus was depicted and described as stumbling when he was carrying the cross.
Wow, that's crazy. James, our last show about Nephilim and stuff, that one did really good. The views keep going up and up and up on that. We had like over 20 people watching on that. I was expecting this show to do a lot better. Maybe it was too late at night or something, but
Maybe it will over time.
I got too scientific, maybe.
No, you're good, Jerry. It was good to have you on for sure. You brought up a lot of good points. So did James, and I'm really glad we did this show. This is why I wanted to have James on here, because it give us a bit of back and forth, because he doesn't.
Also, I would say, I believe the last papal pronouncement on the shroud was that whether it is ancient or medieval, either way, it is approved to be utilized for meditation purposes.
Yeah, meditation purposes.
Yes, a person can meditate on the shroud just like you would an icon and still receive benefits.
Gotcha. I would like to go see the Shroud one day and tour
I
in
would like
Italy.
to see it in person if I could,
Yeah,
but
that would be cool.
Apparently, it was on tour here in the U.S. In the last 20 years. It was in Washington D.C. for a week, and it was a couple other places.
Really? They brought it?
They brought it over for a short period.
That's crazy. That's
the Museum of the Bible. Just last year had a special presentation about it. Not the actual shroud, but the next best thing.
Yep.
That's cool. That's risky, man. I wouldn't want to lose that thing in a plane
I know,
crash.
right?
So
but to
crazy.
me, it's not so much of if it's a shroud. I do believe it to be the actual shroud, but it's not if it's the actual shroud or not. It's actually about what it represents, which it represents Jesus rising from the dead and saving us from our sins.
Yep.
Yeah, I really like it. I mean, I think it's legit too, but it does represent something good for sure. But we're all right by saying we shouldn't be idolizing things like this, and it's not a salvational issue.
I would say once we receive the benefit of meditating on the shroud, we should go forth and look for Christ. Those who think they found Christ in the shroud, his image, great. But also, what's more important is looking at our neighbor and seeing the image of Christ in him.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen to that. I just had a huge thing about that yesterday. Forgiveness and loving people as Christ wants to love people. And it's a hard thing, and not a lot of people do it, right?
I would say, if it was up to me, we would all be praying St. Augustine's breastplate prayer every day. I'm going to see Christ in me, beside me, and in the person who is approaching me.
Breastplate prayer.
Sorry, Patrick, not Augustine.
You are Christ, my holy Father, my tender God, my great King, my good shepherd, my only master, my best helper, my most beautiful and my beloved, my living bread, my priest forever, my leader to my country, my true light, my holy sweetness, my straight way, my excellent wisdom, my pure simplicity, my peace and harmony. You are Christ, St. Augustine's famous prayer.
Amen.
That's cool.
Also, if you could, I'll just close out. Look up Patrick's breastplate prayer.
Who?
Patrick.
Okay. I like how he says, "You keep me straight." My straight way.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not gay.
I don't think that's what he meant.
Definitely what he meant.
I'm thinking just his path straight.
It's got a double meaning. Okay, St. Patrick's breastplate prayer. Shield for divine protection. St. Patrick's breastplate prayer. It goes, is this one? I arise today through a mighty strength. This one, James?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, let's read that while we close out. I arise today through a mighty strength, the invocation of the Trinity, through belief in the threeness, through confession of the oneness of the creator of creation. I arise today through the strength of Christ's birth, with his baptism, through the strength of his crucifixion, with his burial, through the strength of his resurrection, with his ascension, through the strength of his descent for the judgment of doom. I arise today through the strength of the love of cherub, and the obedience of angels, and the service of archangels, and the hope of resurrection to meet with reward, and the prayers of patriarchs, and the predictions of prophets, and the preaching of apostles, and the faith of confessors, and the innocence of holy virgins, and the deeds of righteous men. Well, look how long this thing is. I rise today with...
Just scroll down to the beings Christ.
Okay. Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ when I lie down, Christ when I sit down, Christ when I rise, Christ in the heart of every man who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks of me, Christ in every eye that sees me, Christ in every ear that hears me. Amen to that. That's cool.
So we should not. So for those who want to see the image of Christ in the Shroud of Turin, that's fine. But let's also aspire to this ideal that Patrick gave us.
Yeah, that's a nice prayer, James. Thanks for bringing that up. KKP says, I am late. Wasn't the blood tested to be AB? It was, right, Jeremy, according to the believers? Jerry, sorry.
Yes.
Yes, so yes, KKP, according to people that think it's real, it was tested AB blood. And we think it's real, except for James, the naysayer. James the halfling.
Again, artists can use their blood as paint.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, sure. As long as you got AB blood.
And they were dead when they did it, because the pathology reports show that the person was dead when they were put onto the cloth, and that blood actually had already started congealing. So the artist had to be dead when they painted it.
And to be an artist.
There you go, you guys. If you want to make $1 million, just listen to James, and you can recreate this thing. The church is offering $1 million, and it's being brought to the States now too. So Europe and the States, you can make $1 million for recreating the shroud.
Never going to happen.
You have to do it with medieval only tools.
Never going to happen.
Especially since they can't even do it with current modern tools.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, that was good. Thank you guys for coming.
It's our pleasure.
A great show. I was hoping more people would show, but maybe as it uploads, we'll get some more views. But it was definitely, yeah. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, James. It was great having you as like the other side of this and bringing in a little, back and forth. So that was cool.
Friday night, Nick, too. So that might be why you're not getting as large of an audience.
Yeah, maybe. It's a bit late too.
Out celebrating Notre Dame's victory.
Yeah. Okay. Well, God bless all you guys. Love you guys and everybody watching. Same goes to you. Make sure you guys subscribe and check out the links. Join our Discord if you like. And I would love to do some more shows in the future. Maybe some more Nephilim stuff, because that really got a lot of views going for us, didn't it, James?
And also, if you are joining his Discord, make sure you tag Alec when you join.
Yeah, tag Alec. All right, you guys are awesome. You guys have a great night, and look forward.
Jerry, bye.
Yeah.
Good night. God bless you.
God bless you.
That was you.
Some upcoming shows, guys. Yeah, thanks, James. Always a pleasure. Bye, guys. Oh, check out James's website and in my last video I did, in the link to the description, I got links to his website and his books and all that. So check them out.
My website's going to be refurbished soon. So look for 10 days from now, you should be able to find www.jamessnapjr.com.
Oh, that's a lot better and easier to remember. I'll definitely put that link in there when it's up. All right, man. You guys are the best. Have a great night, guys. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
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 See you guys.